we're hearing about tapering from the Fed and like ECB and Bank of England, but I noticed that the ECB came out and said, "Oh, just in case it doesn't work, we will do QE again." So I don't think they can get out. And from my learning and reading history about what happened, not just in Germany in the 20s, but also in places like France in the 1790s, I don't see a way out.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today, joining us once again, is Mario from Maneko64, the YouTube channel with over 50,000 subscribers and 13 million views. Mario, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. And I really appreciate your invitation. I followed your channel for a while as well, and I really enjoy your reports. And your dad's and your brother as well.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to have you and an honor to be speaking with you. And what I really wanted to discuss today was kind of taking a step back and looking at the issues we're seeing in the economy right now. We're seeing a lot of inflation and we're seeing a lot of supply chain issues as well. Your perspective is that there's something more fundamental going on. People are blaming this on COVID, that, we shut down the economy and there were supply chain issues and we're seeing inflation because of that. But it actually has to do with monetary policy and dramatic change we saw back in 1971. Can you expand on this?
Yes. So up until August 15th, 1971, and if you want to go further back, up until 1933, the United States was on a gold standard domestically, and then they left domestically in 33, but stayed on it internationally until 1971. So there was a limit to how much money and credit the system could create, the bankers. But after Nixon closed the gold window or temporarily suspended convertibility, that anchor of stability in the monetary system and in the credit markets was taking off. Yes, it took Volcker to let rates rise to 20% in 1980 or 81 for things to stabilize. But ever since and that was the right thing to do, but he could do that because the debt to GDP at the time was about 35%. Nowadays, though, it's like 135%. But ever since the early 80s, we've had a massive credit boom. And the word that's used and that I use as well is financialization. And the U.S. economy, the U.K. economy, where I am, European economy as well, has become focused on spending, on credit, government borrowing, mortgages. Have you noticed, nobody owns anything anymore? Like, they lease their cars, they have a big mortgage, they have to take a lot of debt to get a higher education. I remember when I was younger, maybe because of the way my parents brought me up, or I don't know, but borrowing things to do things was not the right thing to do. The right thing to do was to work, earn money, and try to save money so you could get something. But for 40 years, it's been this mentality of just spending, borrowing. And this is, it's not just the consumer, it's crept up onto government, of course. And they've been one of the worst culprits, but also corporations. I just heard someone speaking with Greg Hunter, I think it was Bill Holter, saying that there are corporations out there borrowing money to pay dividends. I mean, it's crazy. So, yes, while the West has been financialized and while the economies have been hollowed out, industry has been kind of exported to China and other countries, that's what you get. And now with the COVID, I think it kind of triggered. It put it on a magnifying glass. It showed how vulnerable our economies are, especially here in the UK. I think the UK, I saw a statistic the other day, is dependent on trade, so export and imports, for 65% of its economy. And I would say the exports are probably just financial services, which is not really a real thing. While the U.S., for example, I think it's more like 25 or 30%. So, but the U.S. is suffering too. I think it's all been done by design, actually. I think that the globalists, if you look back at the 70s, China was opened up. Nixon went there to meet with the Chinese leaders. Prior to that, the U.S. didn't recognize communist China. They recognized Taiwan, the Republic of China. And then they opened up, and then eventually they let China into the WTO. And that's made things even worse. And we've become dependent on this just-in-time inventory model of an economy. And I think it was one of the guests you or your dad had a few years ago before all this kicked off. And I remember it really well. He was talking about how important truck drivers are to this just-in-time economy. And that's how I see it. And the mainstream media, unfortunately, they're just focusing on the symptoms. They don't realize that this is going to get worse. I might sound a little bit alarmist, but I've been warning about inflation, hyperinflation, collapse for the last few years, only because it's not sustainable. Because in the fiat currency system, the money, the other side of the currency is debt, and the more debt you issue, the more interest you have to pay, and you can't pay it off, so you create more debt, and there comes a point where the debt actually doesn't give you a return, and that's where I think we are. And yes, we're hearing about tapering from the Fed and like ECB and Bank of England, but I noticed that the ECB came out and said, "Oh, just in case it doesn't work, we will do QE again." So I don't think they can get out. And from my learning and reading history about what happened, not just in Germany in the 20s, but also in places like France in the 1790s, I don't see a way out.
It does seem like it's getting worse with the amount of money printing that the Fed is doing. And, the debt ceiling looks like it's, going to be raised again. It's been kind of postponed until December. So your perspective on that, is there any way out of, very, very high inflation and eventually a collapse of the currency supply in the future?
I don't think so. They're going to try to delay it as long as possible. So the collapse will be pretty bad. As for inflation, I always go on about the fact that you need to look at the definition of inflation. And for me, inflation is the creation of money and credit, not backed by real money, gold and silver, that leads to higher prices. And unfortunately, the majority of people, 99% of the people, even economists on Wall Street or at the central banks, they now call CPI inflation, and CPI is actually a measure of prices. It's nothing to do with inflation. So they could tinker with the CPI. They could have a CPI X all commodities, and they could come out and say, well, we're down to 2%, so it's fine. But I don't think people will buy it. And if they buy it, I think what's going to happen, and this is what the Keynesians do, the more things get difficult in terms of purchasing power for the general public, what they will do is they will inflate even more. They'll give more and more stimulus, and that will make things even worse. So I don't see a way out. It will, the only way out will be a total revulsion, probably from foreign investors, because the dollar is the reserve currency and there's a lot of dollars abroad. So eventually these foreign investors will want to liquidate those dollars, and that they have to bring it into the U.S. to buy real things. and that's gonna make rising prices seem like the rising prices we have today seem like a picnic. I don't think there's a way out, really, because as von Mises, in the Austrian school talk about, once you embark on the inflationary road, it's very hard to stop. And that's why in 2019, the Fed was trying to stop it. They were tapering. They were raising rates after the '08 crisis. But then the repo market blew up and they started doing QE again. And then the COVID pandemic was an excuse for them to cut rates back to zero. So, yeah, they will always find an excuse, and they can never go back to. I remember when I started in the business, I worked for a small private bank in Switzerland, and I still remember because I started out in the back office inputting like the transactions we did every day. And I remember we put some money for a client in a 3-month euro dollar deposit, which is dollars that are abroad. They're called euro dollars. It doesn't have anything to do with the currency. They're just called euro dollars. They were the dollars that were out there because of the Marshall Plan. But anyway, this was like 1990, 1991. And guess what the client got to put an annual return for 3-month money? 7%. So we can't go back to even 2% these days. And we went back to, I think, 2.25% in 2019, and look what happened. So, yeah, I don't see a way out, unfortunately.
It seems like where we're moving is, again, just more of this money printing. And I wanted to get your perspective on central bank digital currencies that are being rolled out. China has already rolled theirs out. But also the US has been talking about it as well, the Federal Reserve. So your perspective, will this just increase the ease by which they can just create more money?
Yeah, and I saw today there's a tweet from the Chancellor of the Exchequer here in the UK, who's the equivalent of the Treasury Secretary. He was talking about central bank digital currencies, and he said that the central bank, or the Bank of England in our case, is going to issue that digital currency directly. So I don't see it directly to us. So you'd have an account with the Fed in the US. I'd have an account with the Bank of England, but it's not going to be any different than fiat currency. I think it's got all to do, unfortunately, with these what they call health passes. Or I think in Italy they call it green pass. They want you to put that on your phone, and eventually they want to connect you to the central bank digital currency, and even universal basic income, or MMT. And a lot of people are going to fall for it. They're going to think it's great. Well, the Bank of England is sending me £1,000, or Brit coins, they call it here. I think they're going to call it Britcoin. Or the Fed is sending you 1,000 Fed coin, but you're going to have to be tracked by them. I'm trying to stay away from all that, documentation and stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of people are falling for it, and I don't see it anywhere that it's connected to cryptocurrencies, because at least some people think Bitcoin is worthless, but I'm not too sure about that, because it takes some effort to create a Bitcoin, to mine a Bitcoin, and if there is demand for it, it's worth something. So, but the Bank of England coin, the Fed coin, the ECB coin, Bank of Japan coin, there will be just plain fiat currency. And I think they're using this popularity of digital currencies to get on the bandwagon. But I wouldn't buy into it. I'd stick to my gold and silver. Unless, of course, there's talk that China might back their digital currency to gold. that would be a different story. But I don't see the West doing that.
No, many people we've talked to have said that they do expect gold, at least, to be used again as money in sometime in the future. What is your take on that? It seems like this movement we're seeing is just more digital, less real, and even if central banks are moving to digital currencies, the digital currencies that they're creating have pretty much none of the benefits that, independent cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and all of that have. They're not decentralized. They're not limited in supply, and they're not going to be, private. So your perspective on that, like, it seems like if we just look at what's happening, we're moving even more away. We're moving to a less real monetary system than even we have right now. But do you expect at all gold to be used in the future?
Well, I always tell my viewers on my channel that you don't have to wait for gold or silver to be used as money. You can just become your own central bank. I think it was Jim Sinclair who coined that phrase many years ago. So, yeah, they might not bring it back in the system, but I'm fine with it. I'll hold gold and silver as a monetary reserve. I mean, that's what a lot of sovereign countries still do. Shouldn't be a reason why individuals wouldn't. But I think for gold and silver to come back as widespread money, like where people are using it, we'd have to go through a total collapse. I think the powers that be are going to try to bring in this digital currency, and I don't think it will work. And if it does happen, that gold and silver come back, they will do it out of desperation because they'll have no other choice. So that's the only way I see it coming back in a widespread, general public way. And the problem with gold and silver is that you have to, the people that manage the system, they have to be honest. So, and I personally, I don't think we have honest governments anywhere in the world these days, nor honest bankers. So I think maybe in the 19th century, it was a little more honest, the system. But who knows? Things never stay the same. I remember in the early 80s, I was maybe 15 or 16. We've had all the inflation from the 70s. And it would have been hard to say, oh, in the next 40 years, we're not going to have inflation anymore because our mind was so set to inflation. So the same thing could happen. There could be a transformation, but people will want the sound money, because I remember Ron Paul saying that he had a meeting with Greenspan and he showed him Greenspan's article or essay from 1966, Gold and Economic Freedom, and he asked him to autograph it. And he asked Alan Greenspan, do you still believe in that? And he said, I do. The problem is political, because the general public, they want the inflation. They want the government to give them the handouts. So I think it's all political, also educating the public. And that's the reason why I do my videos, to try to, let people know how money works, and that we'd be better off if we had honest weights and measures, because that's what money should be as well.
Right. And it seems like when we do see crises, when they happen in the past, we saw currency crises, we saw hyperinflation, all that. When we do see that, it seems like people do rush towards precious metals. They wake up again and realize that, gold and silver are real money. If this happens this time, I mean, will the people, do you think, be able to force the hands of the government and the policymakers to reinstate precious metals as money?
Well, I guess it depends on the country, and and we might be in a system where governments collapse all over the place, and we might have communities and people might just start using gold and silver, and, organically with no system whatsoever. But it's possible that the general public might be able to push their leaders to use it. We might have new leaders that believe in gold and silver that become political leaders. It's difficult to say, but as I said, I will stick to holding gold and silver as money, because just because it's not being used in the system doesn't mean it isn't.
Definitely. I think that's so key that, yeah, we can become our own central banks. In your perspective, what are the best ways for people to invest in precious metals?
Well, when I started out in 2002, I started out with gold. I bought a few coins. And then about 6 months later, I bought some silver. All physical. And then eventually, I guess I started looking at the mining companies, because the gold and silver miners, they have a lot more leverage. It's like it's not really like buying gold and silver, but if you're into that. But I think the best way to have gold and silver is physical, gold coins, gold bars, silver bars, and the miners are for people who understand a bit more the stock market and how it works. Yes, there's a lot of different miners as well. There's the big mining companies like the Newmonts and Barricks. They already mine for gold. They are less volatile, and they provide even a dividend. For example, I think Newmont has a pretty good dividend right now. And then you have the smaller companies that are exploration companies. And these companies usually, if they find a good amount of gold or silver anywhere in the world, they get gobbled up by the bigger companies. So that's how it works. But as you've seen since last year, the GDXJ has gotten hit really hard, more so than the GDX, which is the bigger mining companies. So that's the other way to own gold, but you don't own it directly. I think as money as in insurance, it's physical gold, silver, coins and bars, and it depends. Like here in the UK, for example, if you own coins of the realm, so to speak, that's what they're called. There's no capital gains tax. Yeah, in different countries they have different rules, and you just need to do your homework. That's what I did when I started out.
Definitely. I mean, that's one thing, when people are purchasing precious metals that we have to say is, always do your own research with respect to any of the tax rules and everything. We can't really give any the advice, but I think one of the things that you mentioned is the different kinds of coins and bars there are. People have a lot of questions about that, and like what is the best to invest in, and maybe the scenarios for the future, like nationalization of gold and silver, what would be the best to hold in that case, and all of those things. Some people do like, as you mentioned, having the metals that their country produces. So the most popular metals in the US are going to be the gold and silver eagles. Your perspective on that, does it matter a whole lot what form of physical metal people invest in?
Unless, there's strict rules in your country about gold and silver, like I think there's in France, for example. Unless are these rules, I think it doesn't really matter if the gold coin is American or Chinese or British or Italian. I heard that the Spanish mill dollar, the Spanish dollars were still used up until the Civil War in the States. They were accepted. So because it was silver, it didn't matter. And even in the colonies early on, people were using coins from all over Europe. So, yeah, I have a lot of what they call junk silver, silver quarters, dimes. I like those too. And I have the equivalent of the UK junk silver, which is pre-1920, because after 1920, we went from 925 silver, which is sterling silver, to 50% silver. And then after the war, 1940, after 46, we went to no silver. So we haven't had silver here in the coinage since after World War II. While in the U.S., you kept the silver up until 1964, and I think a lot of other countries kept it to the mid-late 60s. I think Germany and Austria still had silver coins back in 1974. And lately I do like some numismatic coins, like collector's coins, but I'm not like big into numismatics. And generally, most of the coins I have for saving, they are British minted coins, coins of the realms. But it doesn't mean that I don't have coins from other countries, because gold coins are nice as well when you buy the old ones, because they tell you a lot about the history of the country. You can learn a lot, from the gold coins and silver coins, for that matter.
Definitely. I think that's so interesting how there is the collector element as well, that if you're interested, you can invest in that as well and kind of get that history element there, as you mentioned. Well, Mario, thank you so much for your time today. I guess before we let you go, are there any last thoughts you'd like to leave with our viewers, and can you remind them where to find you online?
Yeah, I mean, my last thought is that things are getting so topsy-turvy or crazy right now everywhere in the world. 2 years ago, if someone told me, oh, you're going to need an app to travel, you're going to have to do a test every week if you don't take a medication, I would have said they're crazy. So, it's a crazy world. And I said today in my video that right now, my home is like my safe haven. So I think that's the most important thing right now. Stick with your family, your close community. Because things are going to get crazier and crazier. It doesn't mean that things are always going to be bad. I think there are opportunities for us who know what real money is, because I think this fiat currency system is on its last legs. And I think people who have real money, they're going to be the only people who have money when this thing implodes. I can't tell you when it's going to happen. So that's what I would say, my last words. And if you want to look into my channel, it's Maneko64. It's on YouTube. I publish my videos also on some other decentralized platforms, but mostly YouTube.
Fantastic. Well, Mario, once again, thank you so much for your insights today, and God bless.
Thank you very much, and God bless, Elijah.